Not long ago, I went over to J&D's house, and we were cutting a tree. And some of you saw the giant pictures on Facebook with the tree going on. It's a lot of fun cutting a tree. And there was like ants attacking it, so we had to get rid of it anyway. But it was interesting because I was running late. Now, I never run late, right? I'm looking at people right now who I was late to an appointment with on Friday to help them with something. I occasionally run late. And usually it's because I'm trying to squeeze too many things in during the day. And so often I'm running late to cut a tree, and I could have just jumped on it and started cutting the tree with the chainsaw, right? But I've learned from experience that the best thing to do, especially when cutting a new tree, I splurge and cutting a tree that's standing, I usually splurge and I buy the new chain for the chainsaw because it's nice and sharp. And if I take the time to put that on, even cutting the whole tree that day goes a lot faster. And at times, even while cutting, I'll sharpen my saw because it's hard because I want to get it done. But if I take the time, it works out better. And that's really how living life is. Sometimes you need to sharpen the chainsaw. And you need to do some things. And sharpening the saw, now it's remember, I keep referencing this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. Anyone still have that book? Books are funny things. It's like we read a book and then we put it on our shelf and keep it like it's a trophy. Anyway, I have a lot of books. Anyway, but the sharpened saw habit is the idea of see continuous improvement and renewal professionally and personally. And so we need to sharpen the saw. And so just like if you're actually cutting a tree, it's a good idea to sharpen the saw. We also need to sharpen the saw. So if you're a leader, if you're a follower, if you're working for someone, if you're in a marriage, in all those situations in life, it's important to sharpen your saw. Now, I'm not saying grind your axe on your husband. That's not at all what I'm saying. Point being is we have to increase in skill. We sharpen our tools so we live a better life. Now, there's a lot of friction right now between two generations. Anyone want to guess which one? The boomers and the millennials, and it's funny to watch or to listen because I'm an X-Gen, so we always say for the boomers, they're always hating on the millennials, oh, you're this. And I'm like, well, you made them, and then the millennials are all like, okay, boomer, and so they kind of always fight. And sometimes it's because they're not speaking the same language. And here's a little work tip. You need to learn to speak the language of the other generations. That's a work skill. That's a skill. It's learning to communicate your ideas because often you have different values in different generations. And, you wouldn't go to a foreign country and not speak English, right? You'd learn to speak it. I couldn't go to a foreign country and try to speak English. I travel sometimes, or I used to before COVID. Now I'm not going anywhere. But you have to be careful that you communicate in a way that people will understand. And so we sharpen the saw. And that means when you're working for an unstable boss, you have to be careful and learn to phrase and say things in certain ways, right? Because some of you are nodding real hard to that because I think you have, we're going to turn the camera around now because the live audience listening all over the place, so we'll see who's nodding about their boss. No, I'm kidding. And for some of us, I think one of my favorite marriage memes is my wife is so weird. She starts every conversation with, "Are you even listening to me?" Some of you are getting that right now. Some of you are not thinking it's funny. Some of you are poking your husband next to you. But, the truth is marriage is hard. And we have to learn skills to do that. One of the things I do before I do weddings, which my weddings are down a little bit right now because, people can't get married, because, you can't get together and have a big party. You can still get married, but it's a little trickier, is we do marriage counseling. Premarital counseling and teaching people the skills to deal with things. And so in life, there's all these skills. If you take the time to learn, the task will be easier. So there's job skills you need to learn how to communicate. That'll be easier. Marriage will be easier. Relationships are easier when you learn to communicate. Verse 11, if a snake bites you before you charm it, what's the use of being a snake charmer? Now, when I say snake, who freaks out? Does anyone here like snakes? Anyone ever eaten a snake? Oh, just two or three, a couple of us. Okay, that's good. It's funny because I can guarantee, like, if you want people to freak out on Facebook, because I'm the generation that still uses Facebook, post a picture of a snake you find. So, some of you are like, I'm gonna have to burn the house and move, right? Like there's no coming back from that. And it's funny because I live, not far away, but it's sort of, it's like the wild kingdom out there. We got all kinds of wild things going on. We got like eagles snatching snakes and stuff, and some cool. Julie should come out and take some pictures. It's some cool stuff. But I'll take a picture. I'll find like a nice 6-foot black snake friend. I literally felt the tension. People are, no, they're beautiful though. And they have a job, right? And so sometimes they're underneath the house. I just leave them there because they're eating the mice. So I don't have mice in the house. And some of you are freaking out about that. But so anyway, snake, we'll just put snakes on a plane. We'll take your two fears and combine them. I never saw the movie. I don't have to see it. Anyway, it's efficient though. We'll combine them. Now, the idea here is if a snake bites before you charm it, what's the use of being a snake charmer? Now, anyone ever see a snake charmer? I've only seen the cartoons, right? And so I went on YouTube and there's lots of videos of this. The big black snakes in my yard don't freak me out, but the cobra kind of freaks me out a little bit. And I know there's things like sometimes they milk them of their venom and things, and they do some cruel things sometimes to make sure. But it's like I don't know why people charm snakes. I guess it's the way of making. I'd rather busk with a guitar and learn to play a song and have people throw money in a hat than like have a hat outside and hey, let me charm this cobra. But it's a strange thing. Go on YouTube. You will not thank me for the freakiness you see, but the idea is the charmer does something to stop the snake from doing it. And really, this is kind of a fun little Hebrew wordplay. Snake charmer literally means like the master of the tongue in Hebrew, and that is a wise person learns to soothe things over with their words. And last week we talked about this in chapter 10. It says, if your boss is angry with you in verse 4, don't quit. A quiet spirit can overcome even great mistakes. Because sometimes we get frustrated with people, right? Anyone ever quit a job in a huff? You don't want to answer that one, right? Because, it's like you get mad and it's probably, not the best thing to do unless you've got another one lined up. But there's times when your boss will say something that really irritates you. There's times when your spouse will say things that really irritates you. Trust me, my wife knows that. And so there's a wisdom in the way we deal with our tongue. Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Or I learned it in the NIV, so I read it, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Sorry. We need to be wise in the way we respond and speak to people. If you're following Christ, it affects the way we speak to others. Now that also includes what we post online. What we post on Twitter. I guess Instagram it doesn't because we're taking pictures. But point being is if you're a follower of Christ, it should affect everything that you do and say and type. Romans 12, starting verse 14 says, bless those who persecute you, don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people. Don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil for more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone will see you are honorable. Do all that you can to live at peace with everyone. Do all that you can do to live at peace with everyone. We don't do this on Facebook, do we? We don't do this on Twitter. We do all we can to win the war with people. But following Christ means we live and we act differently to people. And that means our words are different. Verse 12 says, wise words bring approval, but fools are destroyed by their own words. Fools base their thoughts on foolish assumptions, so their conclusions will be wicked madness. They chatter on and on. No one really knows what's going to happen. No one can predict the future. Now, in wisdom literature, this is the Mr. T reference coming up for those of you who saw my post this morning. In wisdom literature, which is what we're reading in Proverbs, they have, it's kind of the wise man versus the fool. And the idea is to be a wise man, not a fool. Because a fool is someone, like, people are going to learn from you, whether it's to model your example or to make sure they're not like you is the example. And a wise man is a wise person is someone who follows God and godly advice and lives the way God calls us to live. A fool, it's not about intelligence. It's not about being, they're not smart, they dropped out of school or, anything like that. But it's about, not living the way that God prescribes. I love Mr. T because, again, it's 80s sermon day. We're going to talk about all kinds of 80s things. But, Mr. T is, I pity the fool. And I posted, if you saw today, it's like fools is like the motivational poster. I pity them. Because, it's not the way we're called to live. We're called to live a different way. And so when you look at people who don't live that way, it's not like your anger or anything, but it's not the way we're supposed to live. Again, some of us will be examples of how to live. Some of us will be examples of how not to live. You choose which one you're going to be. But it says they chatter on and on. Now, I am a talker. I am the guy who talks to the person at the Walmart, pre-mass, because now you're 6 feet away, and I'm shouting at people who don't know me. They just think I'm crazy now. But I'm the guy who I'll make conversation with someone in the grocery store line, and my kids will be like, "Did you know that person?" I'm like, "Nope, I do now though. We're Facebook friends now." I love people. I love to talk. In college, we were a low budget sport in college, so we didn't get to fly many times. Occasionally, we got to. Mostly, we had to drive around Pennsylvania in a van at all hours of night, and my wrestling coach had 5 kids, and he just wanted to get home. So we would drive all night sometimes, and I was usually the guy they put in the shotgun seat because everyone would fall asleep, and I would just talk all night to Randy Stoudemire. I'm that guy. I like people, but ever know anyone who just talks so much and they just won't stop talking? And they're not even talking about anything that makes sense. And a lot of times that's, some of you are laughing. I don't know if it's at me or someone else. But I always wonder, is that the inspiration for Run DMC? You talk too much. You never shut up. So little Run DMC, you talk about people you don't even know. You talk about places that you never go. I said your mouth's moving fast and your brain's moving slow. Come on, little Run DMC today. Some of y'all don't even know. And isn't the Reverend Run now? Isn't he a pastor or something? I'm just saying. Anyone know that person that just talks and talks and talks? Anyone is that person? But it's often said and attributed to a variety of sources, better to be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. And there's times where the best words we can say are maybe no words or few words. Maybe sometimes the best post we can make is to not make a post. Maybe the best tweet we can make is to not make a tweet. And so there's an economy of words that we need to learn sometimes. Proverbs 17:28. Even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. Proverbs 29:11. Fools vent their anger, but the wise quietly hold it back. They don't post it. We chill. It's gotten awkward up in here. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is not speaking. I mean, you ever watch the TV shows, like the talk shows? I mean, none of us do. But before you became a Christian, you ever watch the afternoon talk shows? Because you're sick. You've watched Price is Right. Price is Right is over, and it's sometimes you're like, why would you go on this talk show? It's always someone getting oh, I thought it was a show about making lemonade. No, it's about in some crazy topic, and they're always getting gotten. I'm like, why did you go on this? And I think sometimes it's in our culture we just love it. They think they're going to go on and say something good, but you always end up looking like a fool because it makes better ratings, and we pity them. This reminds me of something Jesus says in Matthew 6:7. Says, when you pray, don't babble on as the Gentiles do. They think their prayers are answered merely by repeating their words again and again. Don't be like them, for your Father knows exactly what you need before you even ask Him. So don't babble. Don't just kind of babble on and cursing. I think a lot of us, you can tell fools sometimes. Now I'm not getting on you. Curse words can be a struggle for all of us. Depending on how you grew up, it's like you kind of hear them all the time. And, like a lot of people use them, it's like commas. Like I say sometimes, they just drop in. Like they're just kind of everywhere. I had someone one time, I won't say the exact phrase, but they kind of said, great sermon to me, but using a word that I probably wouldn't have used, saying, great sermon. And I'm like, thank you. Go here much? Oh, you're an elder. That's great. No, I'm kidding. It's possibly a apocryphal story. I've heard it different ways, but I love this story. It's Winston Churchill, and if he has sort of had a political adversary who was female, and one time she said, after kind of getting an argument with us, said, "Oh, if you were my husband, I'd put poison in your tea." And he said, "Madam, if I were your husband, I'd drink it with pleasure." Now we like that, right? Because that's a zinger. Like, does anyone like a good comeback? Anyone good at comebacks? Anyone think they're probably how Jesus would answer? Not as much, right? Because we like these, but 1 Thessalonians 5:11. So encourage each other and build each other up, just as you are already doing. A lot of times we should use our words to build each other up. Now, years ago I worked with teens, and I don't know how this started, but we were talking about building each other up, and we were reading, I think it was this scripture we were reading, and we were talking about, the purpose of our words is to build people up, right? And so we started this thing, and I'm going to show you this because this is going to get stuck in your head visually, and so if I start doing this to you, this is to remind you. So build up. Don't tear down. Build up. Don't tear down. But often in our culture, we like to tear down. We like the zingers. But we really need to build one another up. And as a believer, as a follower of Jesus, my words should be uplifting. They should be building people up, not tearing down. So build up. Don't tear down. Getting my hand signals wrong. Steal second. Live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. Colossians 4:5. Live wisely. It means our behavior should be different when we're following Jesus. We should. It's a time where we can live as light in the world. It's opportunities. We have opportunities every day to make good choices or bad choices. I still remember 1988, there's a guy named Ivan McGuire. He was a parachute instructor and all kinds of stuff. And he was going to film this person with an instructor and jumping. And so, he jumped out of the plane. You know what he didn't bring? A parachute. Not a good option. There are some people who have jumped out of planes without a parachute and lived. It's crazy. Go on the internet. But generally, that's not a good option, grab your camera, but forget your parachute. And it could happen to all of you. You kind of go, why did he do that? But you end up doing the same thing. but we have opportunities to make good or bad choices. Good choice, put on a parachute. Bad choice, no parachute. And so the way we live every day, we could choose to live wisely by God's standards, by the way He, would have us live. And that means how we speak to one another, how we speak to other people, how we speak to our bosses, how we speak to our spouse, or we have the opportunity to not live that way. James 4, starting verse 13, says, "Look here to you, say, today or tomorrow we're going to a certain town and we'll stay there for a year. We'll do business and make a profit. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like a morning fog. It's here for a little while, then it's gone. You ought to say, if the Lord wants us to, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you're boasting about your own plans, and all such boasting is evil. Remember, it is a sin to know what you ought to do and then not to do it." We need to remember to live our life for something that matters, something that lasts. James kind of has that same image. It's like this morning fog, and that's the word meaningless that Solomon uses throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. It's this brevity. It's not. It doesn't last. It's like a sandcastle. It disappears into the ocean, and we have to live our life in a way that it matters. Colossians 4:6. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive, so that you will have the right response to everyone. And if you read the footnote in the NLT, it says, seasoned with salt. The idea is, kind of like in Matthew 5, starting verse 13, says, you are the salt of the earth. But what good is salt if it loses flavor? Can you make it salty again? It'll be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. The same way you let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. We're supposed to be salt. Salt makes things better. Have you ever had popcorn without salt? It's not so good. It's like eating those little packing peanuts that you get when you ordered something. Anybody remember those? 'Cause now they got the bags of air, But no, my day they had styrofoam because we apparently didn't care about the environment and thought, let's just make more styrofoam and make packing peanuts. But saltless popcorn, not very good. Salt is good. It brings out the flavor. It gives flavor. Light reveals truth. Points to Jesus. And so we're supposed to be salt and light in the world, and how we speak then is part of that. What we say. In our culture, we often value volume over truth. I said this last week. The loudest voice gets heard. Or the person with the most likes on Facebook gets heard. The people with the most tweets, the most followers on Instagram. Now, I don't hate social media. I do think it distorts our relationships sometimes. But we do use social media. We're broadcasting live on Facebook right now, for those who aren't here. But, we have to be careful. Again, like Price is Right. All those voices we hear in our culture, which are we listening to? Are we listening to the ones that have wisdom? Or are we listening to the voices that maybe we shouldn't listen to? Our culture shouts many things. We have 24-hour news. We have the internet constantly streaming things to us. When we wake up, what's the first thing you grab when you wake up? Most of us say the farm. Some of you say farm. What? My language is messed up today. I don't know. I'm just stumbling on my words. I should maybe have fewer of them. But I actually had to, I was going to cover more of this passage today, and I was like, I'm just going to have too long a sermon on a sermon where I'm talking about not talking too much. So we cut her down a bit. But we have 24-hour news. We have internet streaming things constantly. And most of us, we wake up, we grab our phone. We check what we missed, what notifications we have, whether it's something important or make sure you do the dishes. And we have more information available to us now than at any other time, right? Now, mainly we use our phone to look at memes and argue with people we don't know, but we have so much information, Ian Provence said this: the truth is that we have never known so much and understood so little. Because there's so much information available. I open up Wikipedia. Anyone a Wikipedia person? And you read a story, and then you're like, you see a link in there, and you click on that link. 4 hours later, I've been reading Wikipedia, and now I don't remember most of it. So if you ask me, why I spent 4 hours reading Wikipedia, I'm not sure. But now I know where another new island group is that I'd never heard of. But there's so much available to us. But we often understand, and it's not the volume that matters; it's the virtue in what is being said, the truth in it. So we need to acquire knowledge. We need to sharpen the saw. But true knowledge means acquiring wisdom and understanding of God. How we live changes when we follow Christ. How we speak changes when we follow Christ. How we respond to people on the internet should change when we follow Christ. And God has given us this incredible privilege of being his witnesses to the world. And how we live should reflect who he is. And we should be transformed and changed by his grace so that we can see others transformed. As the worship team comes back to play, I know this is kind of like a heavy book in many ways, like there's some serious things, but if we orient our lives differently, it's ultimately a better way to live. You may not want to change the oil in your car, but you need to change the oil in the car if you want it to keep moving, right? And so it's a hard thing, but these are the better way to live.